on this programme, we tell stories that really do cry out to be told, and this is one of those stories. In September last year, mother of two, Sarah de Lagarde, slipped and fell between a train and the platform at High Barnet station in North London. She says it took over 10 minutes for someone from Transport for London to notice, and by that time, she'd already been hit by not one, but by two trains. Sarah suffered the near-complete traumatic amputation of her right arm and the total amputation of her right foot. In a statement, Transport for London said, "This was a series of unfortunate and unique events that resulted in the injured person sustaining life-changing injuries." But Sarah is now taking legal action against them for personal injury, and she's urging them to learn lessons from what happened. And I'm joined in the studio by Sarah herself, welcome, and by her lawyer, Thomas Jarvis from Lee Day Solicitor. Thank you for coming in, both of you. So I know it's horrible to recall it and to describe it, but this was a course of events, a series of events that absolutely mind-bogglingly painful and horrifying in every way. So you were about to go on holiday, and so you'd been working extra late in the office, is that right?
That's right. I was due to visit my parents and attend my dad's 70th birthday, which, it's safe to say, was ruined because of the accident. And
of course.
I'm still feeling quite guilty about that.
Gosh, it wasn't your fault, for goodness sake.
I know, but still.
So you had been working late and you got on the tube to go home.
Yeah.
And you did what many of us have done on many occasions. And in fact, when it happened to me, because I lived in Totteridge, the next station before it, I ended up asleep at High Barnet. It's a known thing that happens, isn't it? So you woke up at High Barnet station, and what happened then?
And I exited the train and then realised that I was completely at the wrong station and wanted to go back into London and be able to alight at the station that I was meant to, which is Camden.
Yeah.
And that's when I lost my footing and fell in between the train and the platform into the darkness.
So it had been raining heavily.
That night, yes.
That night. And when you say between the train and the platform, do you mean the somewhere along the length of the carriage, or do you mean the bit where a carriage joins another carriage and there's a kind of slightly bigger gap?
So it's difficult for me to explain.
Yes.
Because I didn't see,
of course,
from that angle. I just know that I wanted to get back onto the train. And all of a sudden, my world turned upside down, literally, and I fell backwards into the darkness.
You fell backwards?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. And I mean, it's horrible to talk about this, but that's why you're here, so forgive me if we just carry on telling the story. You fell backwards in the darkness, slipping on the rainy, wet platform, and you hit your face, is that right, with such colossal force. So what happened next?
So I broke my nose and my two front teeth as a result of that impact. And as the train pulled out of the station, I felt a huge, blinding flash of pain. And then luckily, my brain must have switched off in some form. The adrenaline and the stress must have kicked in, so I couldn't feel the pain that much anymore. But I knew that I was in a really, really precarious situation. And,
oh, my God.
And that dying wasn't off the cards.
Oh, my goodness. And I have been told that you thought, I've got children. I just can't die. I can't die.
So it was there was a moment where I was almost angry, saying, like, I can't be here. I need to go home. This is not supposed to happen. My kids are waiting. I was meant to, help them pack their bags. And I think that's what gave me that strength to not give up. And I was so determined to not die.
But this terrible thing that had befallen you didn't end there with this train running over you and causing you this immense pain, because what happened after that?
So I cried out for help. That was my plan A. That didn't work. Nobody heard me. And then I crawled over the tracks to retrieve my phone, which I'd lost in the fall, thinking that that was going to be my salvation and I would be able to call someone to help me. And it didn't work because I broke my nose and I broke my teeth, so the software recognition didn't work. And I even tried with my non-dominant hand, my left hand, to punch in the code to open the phone, and it was wet, it didn't work.
Oh my God.
So by then, I knew that my only course of action was to use my voice, and so scream for more help to come. But then the second train arrived.
And then the second train arrived. Oh my goodness. And you have lost, as we said, your leg, your arm, and it was noticed that your bag was kind of trapped between the edge of the platform and the train. It was noticed by the train driver, is that right?
So I would defer to you,
yes,
Thomas.
Let Thomas, you tell us.
Yeah, so her bag, which was a large brown leather shoulder bag which had a laptop in it, was wedged between the train and the platform, and it was visible on the CCTV. And when the first train pulled in, the driver ran off to use the toilet when it's alleged he should have been watching what was happening in terms of passengers safely getting off at the end of the line.
Right.
But when he came back from the toilet, the bag was wedged between the train and the platform, and when he was changing sides, he just poked his head out of the tube and grabbed the bag and just took it to the front cab and drove off. And, you know, we've been asking serious questions to TfL about their protocols to do with suspicious bags, you know, the See It, Say It Sorted campaign. But here you have a situation where it was a very odd situation. It was a large bag, it was in an unusual place. And that's just one of the
And one
hurdles.
of the things we think is that had he just peered down into the chasm, you were wearing a very, very bright pink coat that night, and you were lying there on the track, and had he looked, he might well have seen you there. Then he wouldn't have driven the train off, and then none of this awful, awful disaster would have occurred. So what's happening now with TfL? What stage of things have you got to now?
Well, just to rewind slightly, before Sarah came to me for help, TfL had reached out to her, and that offer to her was something called the Travel Buddy Scheme, which is let's get you back on the tube so we can help you with, pair you with a buddy to do one tube journey to get you back on the tube. That was their offer of help.
I just ask you what you thought of that.
Well, it's offensive. That's the best way I can describe it, because my priority at the moment is not to get back onto the tube.
I'm quite sure it's not.
You know, my priority is to make sure that I'm safe, that my family is safe. To my knowledge, there have been no changes since my sacrifice of my arm and my leg. No changes have been implemented.
What changes do you think need to be implemented?
That's a difficult question, and I feel I'm not qualified to answer that because I'm not an engineer. I don't work for TfL. I don't know.
But you feel that you want something to stop anybody else being in the same situation that you've been through and falling through the gap.
Absolutely. I mean, it's too late for me in that sense. My limbs are never going to grow back.
No.
But at least that my children will be safe. They are coming of age, you know, where they will be travelling on the tube, and they do already. And every time I'm sick to my stomach to know that, you know, this might happen to them. And what about other commuters?
Quite. I hope you don't feel that this is an invasive and an inappropriate question, but you have this prosthetic arm, and I believe they are very, very expensive. And I also believe that because your injury is relatively new, your limb is kind of changing in shape as it heals and everything else. And this could incur an enormous amount of expense, and really a huge amount. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, I was shocked to discover how much a prosthetic limb costs.
Tell people,
you know?
because most people won't know.
I mean, a normal prosthetic leg would cost upwards £20,000.
Wow.
And a prosthetic arm, and we're talking about a bionic level, this is a mechanical arm, but at bionic level is £100,000 upwards, and that's just the hardware.
And does the NHS provide that?
So the NHS supports some of it, but there are very long waiting lists, and so if you want to, take that type of care, then you can wait without an arm for 2 to 3 years, if not longer. And it's very, very important that your neural pathways are used as soon as possible after the accident for them to remain.
And you have children, as you've said, and you're raising them, as you've said. You're back working, I understand. You came from work this afternoon. You're somebody who wants to do everything you possibly can to help yourself to have the most fulfilling and best possible life you can have. So where are we now?
Yeah, so you can see she's doing absolutely going above and beyond.
Yeah, I can.
She's not just,
Everyone watching can see that clearly, that's clear.
And goal number one is for her voice to be heard, because the only people not listening to Sarah at the moment are TfL.
Well, that's why you're here. I mean, you're here because we think your voice should be heard, of course.
And we want to work with TfL to help Sarah in a journey, in a recovery. But we want to work together for the benefit of passengers, all passengers that use the tube, because when something so serious like this happens, to just pull the shutters down and just pretend nothing has happened is probably the worst thing that you could do.
If TfL continues effectively to ignore you, which I think is a fair way of assessing it, we've heard what their statement is. If TfL continues to do this, what will you do?
Well, we will be issuing Sarah's claim in the High Court at the Royal Courts of Justice and starting her legal action towards a trial. But for anyone that's heard Sarah speak, even for a minute or so, she is not a woman who is going to stop until she's heard. So legal case or no legal case, she's not going away, and we will get there eventually.
And so what you're looking for really is some kind of reform to make sure that nobody else ends up in that invidious and appalling situation, but also some financial compensation so that you can effectively lead the life, the maximum potential you can possibly have, with some help when things cost so much money, £120,000 upwards for a prosthetic limb. I mean, who knew that it was going to be that incredibly expensive? I hope that, this platform will be some help in securing what you need. And I am absolutely, as I'm quite certain every viewer and every listener is, bowled over by your incredible courage and extraordinary resilience. Absolutely remarkable, it really is.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you here, and maybe one day you'll come back and we'll talk about something else.